The Ghostly Midwife of Intramuros, a tale of terror and tragedy. Gather, if you dare, to hear a tale woven from the darkest threads of despair, a story that clings to the soul like damp fog on a moonless night, its chilling tendrils seeping into the very marrow of your bones. This is no mere recounting of events, but a descent into a nightmare that unfolded in the ancient, crumbling heart of Manila's Intramuros, where shadows whisper secrets too ghastly to bear. I, a newcomer to this bustling, chaotic city, stumbled upon a horror that defies reason, a terror that haunts me still, its echoes reverberating through my sleepless nights. If you are drawn to tales that chill the blood and stir the deepest recesses of fear, then listen closely, for what follows is a chronicle of tragedy, vengeance, and a spectral presence that lingers in the dark corners of this world. It was but a month ago that I arrived in Manila, leaving behind the quiet simplicity of rural Philippines for the frenetic pulse of the capital. The city was a cacophony of life, crowded, noisy, and cloaked in a grime that seemed to seep into everything. I took up residence in my grandmother's home, a modest dwelling shared with two of her grandchildren, young Johnny, a boy of 11 or 12, full of mischief and mirth, and Pauline, a studious young woman close to my age, her days consumed by her studies at a nursing school within my historic walls of Intramuros, Manila's ancient fortress. In Filipino culture, the weight of expectation often falls heaviest on the firstborn, particularly among families of humble means, who view success abroad as a badge of honor, a triumph to elevate the family's name. Pauline's parents, steeped in this tradition, had molded her for such a destiny, pouring their hopes and meager resources into her education, dreaming of her as a nurse in distant lands. Pauline was a quiet soul, her presence marked by fleeting waves and shy smiles before she retreated to her room, her world seemingly bound by textbooks and ambition. In the weeks of my stay, no friend ever crossed the threshold to visit her, no laughter echoed from her door. She was not strange or aloof, but rather a young woman who had surrendered her youth to the singular pursuit of her parents' pride, her life a tapestry woven from study and sacrifice. Looking back, with the weight of what has since transpired, I wish fervently that her life had remained so simple, so untainted by the horrors that would soon engulf her. I wish she could have stayed that quiet girl, lost in her books, making her family proud. One evening, as Johnny and I battled through the virtual wastelands of Borderlands 2, Pauline emerged from her room transformed. Her face was adorned with makeup, her lips painted a bold red, her attire a stark departure from her usual plainness. "How do I look?" she asked, a rare spark of excitement in her eyes. Johnny, ever the imp, quipped, "Like a clown," but I, sensing her need for affirmation, offered a gentle, "It's fine," and inquired about her plans. She spoke of a party, a rare break from her relentless studies, her voice tinged with a nervous thrill. Moments later, the blare of a car horn shattered the quiet. I opened the door to find a woman in her late 20s exuding the sharp-edged glamour of a Hollywood villainess, flanked by 3 young men in leather jackets, their bravado ill-suited to Manila's sweltering heat. Pauline's unease was palpable as she joined them, her body language devoid of the familiarity one expects among friends. I noted it then, a flicker of doubt, but dismissed it, assuming they were merely her ride to the festivities. How I wish I had heeded that instinct, for those faces, now seared into my memory from newspaper clippings, would soon haunt me with the weight of guilt and regret. By 1 in the morning, as Johnny and I prepared for bed, Pauline had not returned. She was due home an hour earlier, and our grandmother, gripped by mounting panic, tried desperately to reach her, to no avail. The police, when called, dismissed our concerns, deeming it too soon to launch a search for a mere few hours' absence. Our grandmother, her heart breaking, fell to her knees, tears streaming as she pleaded, insisting that this was not Pauline's way. Defeated, we convinced her to rest, but sleep eluded us all. By 11 the next morning, chaos erupted, the screech of tires, the frantic shouts of teenagers, and then 3 thunderous knocks at the door, followed by the fading wail of a car speeding away. I opened the door, and the sight that met my eyes will forever be etched in my soul. Pauline, her skirt torn to shreds, her dress ripped apart, her body marred by blood and bruises. Words were unnecessary. The truth was written in her wounds. We rushed her to the hospital, where she sat in silence, her gaze fixed on some unseen void, her spirit seemingly shattered. The room filled with the anguished cries of our family, but Pauline remained an island of stillness, her emptiness a stark contrast to our fury. On the 3rd day, she spoke, her voice a fragile thread, refusing to recount the horrors she had endured. Yet her resilience, however faint, shone through. She seemed determined to reclaim some semblance of herself. But justice was a distant dream. The men responsible hailed from wealthy, influential families, their power brushing aside our meager attempts to seek redress. Pauline's parents, their savings drained by her education and medical bills, could not sustain the fight. Pauline, weary of the battle, urged us to move on, whispering, "It's time to forgive and forget, to move forward." A month passed, and life seemed to settle into a fragile normalcy. Pauline, taking a break from school, remained at home, her ordeal seemingly buried in the past. Or so I believed, until I found her weeping in her room, her face a mask of despair. She confided that her period was over a month late, and at her desperate urging, I bought pregnancy tests. Each one confirmed her worst fears. She was pregnant. The weight of that truth crushed her dreams of nursing in America, her parents' hopes, all shattered by a single night's brutality. She withdrew further, refusing food, her days spent in isolation, her spirit broken not just by the assault, but by the loss of her future. I was tasked with bringing her meals, each time met with her pleas to leave her alone. But on the 5th or 6th visit, I lingered, drawn by a faint, eerie sound, a song, soft and haunting, drifting from her room. Magda, Lana, ikaw ang aking tanglaw. Magda, Lena, ako'y di bibitaw. The words, repeated endlessly, chilled me, their melody strange and mournful. The next morning, a blood-curdling shriek tore through the house. I rushed to Pauline's room, finding it awash in blood, far too much blood. She huddled in a corner, trembling, her body stained crimson. At the hospital, doctors declared she had suffered a miscarriage, but the sheer volume of blood defied their diagnosis. Pauline remained for 4 nights, with Johnny and me by her side, watching as she refused sleep, her eyes wide with terror. On the 2nd night, a nurse administered a sedative to help her rest. I awoke at 2:09 a.m., the room unnaturally cold, a chill that felt otherworldly. As I tried to sleep, I met Pauline's gaze, her eyes locked on mine, filled with a fear that froze my blood. She was awake, yet motionless, her eyes darting up and down, signaling me to look at the foot of her bed. Heart pounding, I traced her gaze, and there, hovering in the dim light, was a figure clad in tattered, blood-soaked Filipino garb from centuries past. Her hands, drenched in fresh blood, gleamed wetly as she floated silently, oblivious to my presence. Dizziness overwhelmed me, and as my vision faded, I saw Pauline's eyes, desperate to flee a body that could not. The next day, I recounted the vision to our grandmother, who, horrified, banished me from the house. Even Johnny was sent to live with his parents, leaving Pauline in our grandmother's care. Years later, at her funeral, I learned the truth from Pauline's mother, who paled when I mentioned the song. It was tied to an old legend of a midwife driven mad by the accidental death of her newborn, dropped from her arms. She carried the child's corpse, singing Magda, Lana, to soothe its lifeless form. Her husband, in despair, buried the child without her consent, pushing her deeper into madness. She began aborting the babies she was meant to deliver, her crimes uncovered when the town noticed an alarming rise in failed pregnancies. Confronted, she was found with her husband's body and her child's decaying remains, and the townsfolk executed her. Pauline's fate, entwined with this ghostly midwife, remains a wound I cannot heal, a terror that haunts Intramuros' ancient walls, where the past and present converge in blood and sorrow.